Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast today. I'm your host, Bryan Smedley. He's a client that I've been working with, and he was willing to get on here and share some of his story, some of the things that he personally was feeling stuck on or struggling with or just wanting help with. I'll let him say it in his own words in a minute. And we wanted to give you a chance to just hear his story and how he was able to create some really powerful, impactful changes for himself in the direction he wanted to go. And I'm going to let him tell you about it. So I'm so excited that he's here and willing to share. Thanks for being here, Bryan. How you doing, man?
Good, Danny. How are you?
Doing good. Always love seeing you. Can you just start out by
Yeah,
telling us like who you are, what you do, what kind of life you
yeah,
got going?
absolutely. Yeah, I'm Bryan Smedley. I've got a fantastic wife, five amazing kids. A job. I work in the medical field. I'm a surgeon. We've been our family's been through some tough things that we've dealt with, whether it was with health or with business or with just education, those kind of things. Always felt like I was Superman and could handle it all, and that it was just fine. And then I started to realize that there was probably needed to talk to somebody, get some guidance on some of the thought processes that I had, and and how to maybe look at things a little differently than I had before. I'd done therapy at different times in my life and so I thought I'll just go back to a therapist, and I went and met and with him, and it just didn't seem to go anywhere for me. I went out of there feeling like I had wasted his time, and that was how my brain thought of it. Oh, I wasted his time, and not necessarily realizing my time was wasted too if I didn't come out of it feeling like there was something to look at. And I was very much all ears of, I understand I could be the problem. I could, like, this is most likely, I don't need this to fix. I feel like I went into it with the right attitude, I think is what I'm trying to say, as I wasn't trying to get validation of something else in my life needing to change. I was like, I'm ready and willing, but it didn't fit. And then along the side of that, my wife has been, she is a trauma informed. And she said, why don't you talk to Danny? And Lindsay's your wife, Lindsay, and my wife. So Jenny has done Lindsay's course, and they've been friends. And so I said, yeah, I'd be happy to talk to him. That'd be great.
Yeah. Okay, so tell us a
So,
bit more because a lot of people think, oh, you only get a life coach if like your life is sucky in some ways, but
right.
you have a fantastic life, and when I met you, like you did feel that way too. But then I think my
Yeah.
question is, can you give us a feel for then why did you seek out therapy? Why
Why
did you
did I
hire
need
a
to? Right.
coach? What were some of those key things that you're like, but yeah, here's why.
I think some of the most mind bending part of that was everything was working fine. Everything was going fine. And yet I didn't feel fine.
Okay.
There was some of that I was like, And we've had, where I'm a lifelong member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, actively involved. I love it. I love what I've learned. I've loved what it is. Not all of my family members are. So that was, we were coming to, over the past several years, we've also come into kind of some crossroads there. And I realized that there was probably ways to think about things that I could approach that would actually give me an opportunity to have some closer relationships with people that I love and am close with. But I needed to figure out how to think. I needed to figure out how to work through some of that stuff, because a lot of it is feelings. Like, people say things or do things, and it doesn't maybe, and that doesn't just line up with like church stuff. That's in any time. Our biggest disappointment is when expectations are not met, or when our expectations, things don't go the way we expect them to. And I think in life, I'd seen that in business, I'd seen that in health, I'd seen that in patients that I treat. There's so many areas. So I think that was it. I felt like I could show up really quite well for most everything that I was dealing with. But there were areas within myself and within those closest to me that I felt like I actually I needed some outside eyes and some outside ears, and maybe to reevaluate how I was looking at stuff.
Okay, so you didn't feel fine, even though things seemed fine. Tell me more. What does that mean? You didn't feel fine.
I think I'd find myself at the end of I picked the profession I'm in because, and particularly the specialty, because I wanted to feel like I had my best to give to my family when I got home and I felt exhausted, worn out, and then, I don't know, sad. I think I was in I don't know that I've had anxiety, a lot of anxiety in my life over things, but this was more just sad, just more depressed, just
Yeah.
down.
And you're an ENT, right? That's your
Yes.
specialty. Yeah.
Yep.
And then you're more involved with the LDS church than I am. I'm not as involved these days. I grew
Yep.
up, I did the mission thing. I was like heavily involved till in my 30s, and you knew this about me when you hired me. So I think
Absolutely.
there are a lot of people who like feel like you got to be in or you're out, and if you're in, you better work with a Mormon or an LDS therapist or coach, and
Yeah.
or they might pull you away, or I don't know. I think I just wanted to like, if you could share with people like, why did you want to work with me even though you knew this about me, and was there any concerns with that, or can you?
Actually, that was a huge positive for me to
Okay.
know that about you and know what I did know about your history. I also knew that you were known as the porn guy. And that was, and for me, that really wasn't a thing. And when my wife recommended, she goes, why don't you talk to Danny? I'm like, the porn guy? I don't really. And
Yeah,
she goes,
that's
no,
not
I
why
mean,
you hired me at
he's, and then
all.
she told me about you. Exactly. I hired you because I wanted I wanted to be able to talk to somebody that could understand my thought processes, could understand it from a different point of view, right? Yeah, I think that the idea that you're not as involved right now was helpful. Not because I don't feel like I need somebody to coach me on how to do that. I don't need somebody to tell me which direction I need to go or be in or out. That's a
Yeah,
decision that I make. And
yeah,
so I don't need somebody else's guidance on that. I need somebody who has been through heavy feeling moments, because I feel like I'm a person that does rely heavily on how I feel about something. So I needed somebody that can give me that had been through the heat of that could
yeah,
show me, or that could give me tools that work in the heat of that, so
yeah,
to speak.
yeah. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. And if there are any types of people that I get, it's LDS doctors, because I used to be a dentist, and I really get those people.
And I think if we're looking at like a group of people that I think doesn't feel like they have a place to turn, it's that
Yeah,
LDS healthcare providers, or at least there's that. I don't mean to minimize other areas, but I do know that's an area that does not get help. Like, where do we turn to?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. I'm so glad that you found me. I've just loved
You too.
working with you, man. So
It's been
tell us a bit more.
fantastic.
Like you said, you shared some of your experience with therapy and trying that route. Can you tell a bit more, like what was different that did fit so well for you in particular in terms of coaching and doing this process with me?
Yeah, I one thing I look forward to our calls, like really look forward to them.
Oh, fun.
And when
So do
I
I.
come off of them, I feel like I'm like, oh man, that was really great. Like I feel kinder towards the people I'm working with. I feel kinder towards myself. I feel kinder towards I come out of it going, man, that feels really good. I've not been someone that like goes for a run. I think run and fun rhyme, but they don't really have that much in common other than that. But I know there's people that go for a run and they get like an endorphin kick or something out of it. I feel like when like our sessions really help me unlock some things, and I am able to use it throughout the week. I'm like, shoot, yeah, that's great. And I can't tell you how many times we've talked about things, and in our discussion, then that next week, I'm like, holy cow, I just learned a tool to like know what to do right now. That's great. So highly applicable stuff.
Yeah. Oh, that's so fun. Love that.
And
All right.
I
So,
live,
yeah, can you give us like
yeah,
a specific example or two of some of those moments where, oh, look, like what we have been working on just totally impacted this in this way?
yeah. So one of the ideas, this is kind of to the medicine side of things, like training, they go through and they're like, okay, you're in the operating room. It's funny how you like hold on to a line and then you keep that with you, and that's what you always go back to, right? But I was in my surgical training, and the guy gets up there and he goes, okay, you're in the operating room, who's the most important person in the room? And of course we're like, the patient. And he goes, no, it's not. And I stopped and I looked at him and I was like, what do you mean? He goes, it's the anesthesiologist. And I said, why is that? And he said, because that's who's keeping your patient alive. He said, so your relationship with the anesthesiologist is make or break to the safety of your patient. And that was huge because throughout my training, throughout the times I've seen where the God complex that they call it of a surgeon comes in and they think they're the most important person in the room. and they justify why they can speak mean to an anesthesiologist or to a nurse or whatever, why they can act a certain way because they're trying to protect the patient. But in reality, they protect the patient by keeping everybody else as comfortable as they can be. And so that has served me incredibly well throughout my career. It really is good advice. If I make sure that the anesthesiologist and I are communicating well, that I'm communicating well with the nurses and the other parts of the care team, like we went through some really hard surgeries, hard situations just fine and navigated well. And I felt like that, me being able to stay in that calm place and know how to keep the place calm, got great outcomes for my patients and really helped us navigate through some stuff that otherwise would have been tragic, and it was just fine.
And so I guess I'm feeling like if I knew a couple of certain important keys that extended out and helped me navigate all sorts of scenarios in life. And I think I was hoping to find some similar things for that in my life today, like I guess applicable in different ways outside of the operating room, but looking for some similar pieces. And one of the things that we talked about, you brought out the feeling wheel, right? Because I was talking to you about how bad I hated my charts. Like charts were awful. Charts represented time away from my family. They represented, and we even talked about it. You're like, let's look at this. And we look at the charts and I'm like, I'm disgusted with my charts. And you're like, wow, that's pretty heavy. And to circle back to that is even something as simple as you walking me through how to feel my feelings and just identify where they were. That really unlocked a lot of stuff for me, helped me to look at it and then to not be afraid of them, because that led to our discussions about how feelings, I had a view of feelings being either negative or positive, and an outcome that would come from that. Oh, I can't feel that way because that leads to this and this. And in reality, if I can just look at each feeling and not consider it as good or bad, but just as a feeling, I can feel it, I can learn from it, I can understand it, and then I can make a sound decision on what to do next.
Yeah. Yeah. And these are just things that we have ways of practicing together in our sessions, and we find ways to fit it with your style. And so can you give people a feel for, okay, so how did your charts start going when you were doing your patient charts after we did that work? And how did getting more skillful in the way that you navigate your feelings, how did that impact your home life more?
I feel like I didn't realize how much time I was wasting being frustrated over things that probably more frustrated over how I felt about something, to be honest with you. Like I'd be like, oh, I got to get this done, or I got to get this done. And I couldn't even get past that mental break to actually get it done until it was piled up so hard that I was like, man, now I'm behind. I got to get this done. And then pretty soon I'm sounding shorter with my family and shorter with those close to me. And they're like, what's going on? And then I have to go and spend several hours on a weekend that I would have rather been actually spending good time with them to go deal with that thing. But so much of it was built up on how I felt about it rather than the actual job that needed to be done.
Yeah. Yeah. So we basically practiced making room for, rather than I shouldn't even feel how I feel about this. Okay, there's room for me to feel how I feel about this. And when you do that, you get to see, oh, this is how I feel about this. You find some wiggle room in terms of, okay, we can have kind of a sounding board and verbalize and release that. And I remember watching you shift into feeling some new ways about it. It seemed like it made it way easier to go.
It was.
The charts done.
Yeah. And it really was funny because you're like, was there another way you can think of it? And I'm like, yeah, I guess I realize if I never submit that chart, I don't get paid. It doesn't matter what I did. I don't get paid for it until it's documented that way. And and that seems like I could have told somebody that, but it didn't make sense until I'd worked through it, felt through it, and felt like it was really interesting to see what happened when I felt it, but wasn't judging myself about feeling it. Yeah. I didn't have any, it wasn't like I should feel this way, or I need to feel this way, or why can't I feel this way? I just felt. And then then I could move on with that.
Yeah. And then to me, it sounds like you noticed the impacts enough. Like you just signed up to work with me for another 5 months, and you could just try to do all this on your own or just read books. Or, like, why not just do that? Like, why actually fork out the dough and the time and commit to working together?
That's a good thought. here's, I guess, where I look at that, there's a couple of pieces that come to mind. The first part is that charts were such a small thing, but such a big thing. And I remember Jenny would talk to me about what she loved about coaching. Was she goes, it's just amazing how things connect. Like you feel through something here, and then that clicks to this and this, and then pretty soon, whole chunks of your life that used to feel so, like you feel so differently about so many things. Like it really just unlocks it. So it feels like healing for your brain. Like it really does. So for me, we'd have that discussion about charts, and then that would translate into 5 other 3 things during the week that would help me have a better relation, or work on a relationship with somebody, or work on it. Just translated to the other areas that I was like, wow, this is actually, I just feel like I'm in a much better place, a much healthier way of thinking. I'm way kinder to myself than I ever was. And I feel like I'm pretty good at being kind to people, but I'm way kinder to myself. And then I feel like my kindness to others has been able to have, it takes on a new feeling. It's not I don't know, just feels even more natural.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you brought that up too. Like when you coach on one thing, you coach on everything. Like
You.
we were talking about charts, and somehow
Mhm.
that benefits like your marriage,
Relationships,
your
marriage,
relationship with your
kids.
kids.
Yeah, somebody that I don't agree with. And
Yeah.
we're in this, okay, we're right in the middle of political world, and we won't even go political. I feel like I can talk to people so much easier
Yeah.
and kinder, and not have things like people that come in. And I see patients all day, every day. I hear every political side of everything.
Yeah.
And I feel like I can just be really okay hearing what people have to say. Doesn't get my rile up about feeling like someone else should believe the way I believe or anything like that. It just really translates into a kinder, like and then we've talked about electrons, like the charge and the the crazy charges and polarizing things that are all around. I feel so much more calm about things than I ever.
Man, maybe we need more people hiring coaches right now with the whole
Probably do.
political environment at the moment.
I know. True. How are you going to feel if your candidate doesn't win? Are you still going to be able to live? And are you still going to be able to are you still going to be able to navigate? And the answer is yes, if you will, or no, if you won't, but it's all up to you.
Yes. All right. Cool. Then, yeah. What else? What would you say are some of the things that surprised you most about just the whole process, or how
Yeah.
things impacted you?
So I really like being able to connect to my feelings. If I do flip back into the LDS church upbringing, right? I had always been like, as I would read the Book of Mormon and stuff, it would talk about some of the worst times that followed were when they were beyond feeling. They would make reference to that. The so and so people were beyond feeling. And then after that, like their lives are falling apart. And I thought that was always interesting to me, because it took it from a context of who was making what choices to how were they feeling? Were they allowing themselves to feel? And I feel like prior to our coaching, I don't know that I was really letting myself feel, or else I was being governed by feel. I was running away from what felt like a good feel, or running away from what felt good or bad or whatever, or trying like I was, yeah, I wasn't feeling, processing, and then making a sound, good decision. I was letting feelings make my decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and I feel like this has been massively helpful to make me be able to just make decisions that feel, or make decisions that I guess I can feel more confident and stand more firmly and comfortably with, just because I know that I can feel things. And when I feel things, Jenny will talk to you. Sometimes I get into this like moment of like my feeling my feels, and I'm gonna let you feel your feels. Has to step back. Right. And your coaching has helped us be able to learn through that as well.
Yeah. Change those conversations with
So much.
your wife.
Yeah. And my kids and friends and family, extended family. Like it really it's been great.
Like you can be there, be in it, a bit more
Yeah.
engaged and
Yeah.
empowered rather than reactive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people just think, you need to make decisions where feelings aren't affecting the decisions. That's
Right.
where you're going to make your best decisions. And I think you can have moments in your life where you can do that. But
Mhm.
as like a way of life, from day to day over the years, feelings, whether you can do that for moments or not, like feelings are going to impact your behavior and your decisions
Sure.
if you have a human brain. They just are.
Right.
You can't like work around that completely, I don't think, unless you like
Right.
become a sociopath, maybe. I don't know. But
Well, yeah, isn't that the
right.
idea? The only way you can have them not is you actually have to numb yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And so
Right.
you can either avoid them and let them queue up and then have these reactive moments where you're not quite showing up the way you want to or not in
Right.
line with your values,
Yeah.
or you can actually like make room for them, learn how to work with them in a powerful way. One of the things that I am always telling clients that I was taught by one of my coaches is like the worst thing that can happen to you is a feeling. For humans, like when you think about your worst
Crippling.
case scenario, like I'm gonna be lose my job, I'm gonna be homeless, we're all gonna be on
Yeah.
the street. Like the worst part about it in your imagination is how you think you're gonna
How you
feel,
feel.
like
Yep.
just humiliated and dejected and
Right.
unworthy. And
Right.
that's really what the worst part is. So when you learn how to like process and go toward and be with these feelings along the way and even get intentional with how you direct them, it's like you become unstoppable
Yes.
because
It's
then
true.
you can face
Yep.
the worst,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. You're not afraid of it anymore.
Yeah.
And it's not like you're not making a decision. My brain always thinks in analogies, but a limp, like if somebody's limping, we call that an antalgic gait.
Okay.
Like you reposition your whole body so that you don't have to do something that's going to cause you pain.
Yeah.
Like antalgic, you're against pain. Like you would shift your whole center of gravity, do all these things so that you don't put any weight
Yeah.
on something that hurts.
Yeah.
And from that you can make the other hip, if it's a hip, like your other hip goes to like gets shot, like you can blow out everything, or you can figure out how to work with the injury or the pain or whatever it is,
Right.
feel it, work through it, whatever that is, and then you can actually get back to walking.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have times where like you ease off and you just
Yep.
make room for the pain. You don't
Yep.
push too hard, right?
Yep.
You
Get
find
some
your
crutches.
zone of tolerance, but then also you have
Right.
times like me today at the gym. I hurt my ankle like 6 weeks
No.
ago playing
Yes.
basketball. And
Dog.
I tried the treadmill for my first time and I was like did about 2 minutes. I was like, okay, I'm glad I tried that. And 2 minutes is good.
2 minutes is
Back to
enough.
the elliptical.
Yep.
you know?
Absolutely.
No, but
But
it's the
how?
same thing with our
Yeah.
feeling. If you just avoid it, ignore it, then it never, you don't
Yeah.
heal. If you go too hard, too fast and force it, same thing, you don't heal.
Yep.
So you find that sweet spot along the way.
Yep. And that feeling is input. I think I used to think and I think people do, they'll numb the feeling, right? You're not going to limp if you don't feel that feeling. But if all you've done is just injected lidocaine onto it and you don't feel it, you could hurt it. You can actually make something worse, right? So
Yeah.
it's important to be able to be in tune with our feelings, feel what they're telling us, feel it and process it through, and then function and then make our moves, but not do it in a way of running from a feeling or running towards a feeling.
Yeah.
Just let them be input.
Okay, so I hear some people come with questions on this point. Okay, but doesn't that just take a lot of time and effort and energy? I don't have time to slow down and isn't that more inefficient? I need to be efficient. I got a lot of stuff to do. This is going to slow me down too much. What's your experience with that? How would you respond to someone who's worried about that?
Yeah, I would say that that's what I was worried therapy was going to be. And I'm grateful for therapy that I've had in my life. There are times that would be the preferred thing for me to go through, to be involved in, than coaching. Like, I don't look at it as a replacement. They serve different purposes.
Yeah.
But for me, I feel like the efficiency and that's all improved. That's increased.
Okay. So
Like
we
I've
do
been
slow
better.
down and look at things in sessions, but then overall you gain more than
Yeah.
what you
I
slow
feel like,
down.
yeah, I feel like I have a lot. I think if I was looking at it as productivity based, efficiency based,
Yeah.
that actually, my decision for the first 5 months with you, that first one was, I need some help. The
Yeah.
second one was, this has helped a lot. And I can see this being a valuable piece moving forward.
Yeah, I want more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think and this kind of circles back to the question you asked earlier, was why don't I just do it on my own with self-help books
Yeah.
and those kind of things? And I think if I was looking like my efficiency or productivity of that, I doing it on my own, I'm sure I would have been working on 10 months. If say 10 months into this, I think I'd be probably at about month 1 on my own. So
Okay. Hey, can you share too? I just want to hear you have some things that you feel really passionate about just being a part of the solutions for. Number one, I know part of why you got on this podcast today is like you really want other people, other professionals or men or whoever to like
right,
to know we can talk about this stuff
have a
and
place.
there are resources. Can you just tell us like why you feel strongly about that? What you hope for those people?
I do think, and we touched on that, but I think I can relate to the feelings of a Latter-day Saint dad, working professional. Jenny and I got married a year into my undergrad,
Yeah.
and we did undergrad, medical school, residency. One of our kids is a leukemia survivor, moved a couple of times, highly involved in church, transitioned to where not all members of the family are involved in the church, business failures, business success, like all those things. And through all of it, I feel strongly that prayer and pondering and stuff was helpful, a helpful part of that. But there were just daily applicable things that I needed that I didn't have access to, or I didn't have time to do, or I didn't know where to turn. And I feel like this kind of a coaching experience has given me the chance to get some pieces that I couldn't get anywhere else. And so for the dads and moms, I don't mean to limit that, but they're, yeah, something like this can be massively helpful for you. And I don't know that there is a lot of option out there. I don't feel like I felt, and this may be totally wrong. I'm just throwing out there my judgmental or my knee-jerk reaction. I felt like seeing around me and talking to other people, go to therapy, like that seemed to help some people. That help, or couples therapy, or those kind of things. Like, I don't feel like a lot of that. I don't feel like a lot of guys that think like I did or do felt like there was an avenue there. That felt like another burden. That felt like another thing of, I don't have time for that either. I don't have time for that. But then what we've done has allowed me to show up in all those areas that I would want those things to help with way better. And it's been our 45-minute calls once a week, 3 weeks a month. And we started this one out in my car, but the connection was bad. But that's where wearing the clothes that I'm going to work in, carve out that 45 minutes, and that was it. Like, it was so helpful, and it was massively efficient being able to do that.
Yeah. So cool what you've been able to create for yourself just by making the choice and deciding to show up and like you practice during the week. You remember the things we talk about and you find ways to apply them but it sounds like you don't do it in a way that's like big and complicated and draining. Like it's energy building.
It's energy building. It's like the math rules. Like when you used to have to go out, multiply it out and stuff, then it was hard. But as soon as you just knew in your head that 5 times 5 was 25, like it was just there. So things just clicks. We have our session, comes across in ways that I understand, it's applicable, and it makes things like it just makes it better.
Yeah. Okay. And then I also wanted to ask you too, like you and your wife have a cool movement / group that you're a part of to support the LGBTQ community, particularly within the church,
LDS world.
LDS church. Can you just tell us a bit about what your goals and visions are and what you're doing?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I just love what you're doing, and I want you to have the stage for a sec.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting. My wife came to me many years, I don't know, several years ago, and she's, I can't do this anymore. I don't see, and she says it so much better than me, but she goes, I don't see a place. If we don't have a place for people, for everybody, I can't be a part of it. I don't see that. And there was a bit of a faith deconstruction, faith crisis that our family went through, even with and between my wife and I. And it was one of those moments that opened the door. I'm like, I don't know what it's going to turn out like on the other side or after people die or whatever, but I do know that through some kindness in how we interact with others in the trenches, families that are trying to navigate that space between the LGBTQ world and being active in the church, and the painful things that can be said that can, that space that leaders in the church are saying, take between making statements, taking stance, and what kind of injury that does to a family that's trying to be in the trenches of working through balancing navigation of their beliefs and their love for people and all that kind of stuff. And so we were in the trenches of trying to figure out what we were going to do. And it's Jenny did the coaching, she did the trauma work, she did all those things, and she was miles ahead of me. She could understand, she could see, she could navigate those places. And we found a beautiful spot within that space of the LDS church and the LGBT world. We're heavily involved in an ally group, a support group that allows people. We have it at our home with a couple of other families where it just gives people the chance to come and be there with each other. And it's not, I'm never going to be able to affect church policy. I can't change what's said over the pulpit. And I don't care to, whatever, that's not my place in life. But I can definitely help somebody. I can definitely be there for somebody that's feeling the hurt and be loving and kind to them. And it's allowed me to have opportunities to talk to people that think completely different than I do. And I get it, and it's okay. And we can think completely different and still be there for each other, still love each other, I don't feel like people have to think the way I think. That's fine. I'll think the way I think, and I'll let you think the way you think. And it's been cool. It's been a beautiful place, honestly, to be able to meet. I've met some of the absolute most wonderful people in my life. And it's just been amazing. And honestly, it's brought me closer to the gospel of Jesus Christ. As weird as that sounds, right? You made the mention.
Sound weird to me.
Yeah, but you know how people like say you have to be either in or you have to be either out. And I would say there's actually something different than in or out. There is something that is so much more powerful. I don't have to make a decision of in or out. I am where I am. And that world is heavily involved and thinking also very different than I did 5 and 10 and 15 years ago. And there's actually a spot there. It's a potential space, and it's a space.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you're like giving yourself permission to just create that space. And for you to do it in a way that you feel good about, but also helping be a part of creating a space where people who are experiencing real pain from the real effects of how certain policies and things are done, like where they get to be seen, they get to be heard and listened to, and you're not trying to change them. It's just, let's have a place to be witnesses of each other and love each other.
Yeah.
When you talk about gospel of Jesus Christ, like
that
sounds like to me.
That is where it's at.
So I know not everybody would agree with that, but
right. And that's the beauty of it, is that they cannot agree with it. And it's okay. They don't have to. Yeah. And that's fine. So Danny, you challenged me once to do something with,
which I tend to do.
Yeah, which I like. Yeah, it's a good thing. But so you've challenged me many times. One of the challenges was, what can I do with some of the thoughts that I was having, right? And we had talked about, so my nephew is a phenomenal artist, and he has drawn a picture, and we're in the process of he's shown me some of the pieces that he's putting together for it, but it's a picture of a lamb and a lion. Yeah. And the lion is sitting there comfortably, vigilant, but comfortably cuddling the lamb. And the lamb is as peaceful and calm and happy as it can be. And in that picture, both of them are at the happiest points that they can be. And next to it, there is a sword bent into a plowshare, and a spear bent into a pruning hook. But the idea is that, because I do believe there is a time where we can have completely polarized points working together and being together. But the lions have to stop feeling like the lambs are their prey. The lambs have to stop feeling like the lions are trying to kill them. But that's the piece. And I feel like that's the potential space that this opens up, is for me to be able to say, how do I just live in this world between polarizing thoughts? Because that's actually where the magic happens. The sword and the plowshare analogy, it's the bend, that space between these two polarizing thoughts where all the magic happens. That's where the beauty is.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful picture that you described. And yeah, the way I heard it from someone is that the people who are marginalized, that's like where some of the greatest learning for all of the humans comes from, is where there are people being marginalized who seem like they're somehow on the fringe or the edge. If we can all stay open to learning, There's such great opportunity in
Can
those areas.
can I
Or
tell
we can just lock our minds down and say, this is the way I will always. And so,
can I give you an illustration of that? It actually makes me teary thinking about it.
hey,
So we were involved in the Gather conference up in Provo this past week, and they did a Gather for Youth. So youth were able to come, and they tried to, during the day, they would have youth activities for kids in the LGBTQ world themselves or allies. And our daughter participated as an ally. She's
this
a
was just
teenager.
this last
This was
weekend.
last weekend. Yes, last weekend. So our daughter participated as an ally. So she was the marginalized, right? She's in a
Right.
group.
So your
Does that make
daughter
sense?
was marginalized. Make that more clear.
So
That's
she doesn't identify as lesbian, gay, straight,
right. So
transgender,
this is a group with predominantly LGBT
predominant.
people,
Yep.
and she is not, but is an ally and is
And
there,
she is
and
an
she's a
ally
minority in this
there.
situation.
Exactly. She is the marginalized, the minority, the one that doesn't necessarily fit. She had the absolute best experience. And she was also hearing these kids that have been to FSY, that have been to FY, been to these opportunities where they were the ones marginalized, right? They were the ones that were on the edge, that were told, just come here, we'll show you how to repent. Just come here, we'll show you how to think the way we do. And felt completely outcast. There was no place for them.
Yeah.
Those same kids created the most beautiful, loving, accepting, healing, amazing space for my daughter. And so when you mention that the marginalized are the ones that are the space, I 100% agree. I think that, so it was beautiful to see that in action. I was like, holy cow, she came home with so much faith, hope, joy, like all the good things you'd hope a kid could have. And it was something that on paper, my 5 years ago self, 10 years ago self would have never been able to imagine.
Yeah. Goosebumps. Right.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
unreal.
amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they get to experience like how sucky it is to be marginalized in that way. And then they actually are willing to acknowledge there's some issues
Yeah.
there, and they could just turn around. And I think some people do just turn the negativity back the other direction. But
Sword for a
it's
sword.
also cool that there are people who are like, you know what, we can take this and we can choose a better way, a way that's better for them and that they
Yep.
want to be a part of. And
Yep.
your daughter sounds like she really was
Oh,
inspired by
so
that.
neat.
That's so awesome.
It was so neat. And the counselors and the people that were there, they were the people that had been, yeah, marginalized, cast aside, like hurt, truly hurt by things that the mainstream scenario had told them that they had to be, how they had to feel. And it was goosebumps. It was the strongest I've ever felt, like some of the strongest I've ever felt, like the spirit, the guidance, our heavenly parents there with us. Like it was beautiful.
Thanks so much for sharing. All right, man. Let's wrap this up. Do you have any last words you just really want to share?
So there's another part of the picture.
Okay.
There's another picture that's coming, and that one is a musket, like an old cartoon musket getting bent into an ear horn.
There's a hot button.
There's a hot button topic, right?
Symbol to throw in.
Yeah, that is. And
a little
it,
Elder Holland's talk
yes,
reference.
yep.
Okay.
And the place that we were at, or the place that we are, I've seen the pain. And the place that I'm at, I've seen like with Elder Holland, I've seen the beautiful things that he said that have been so helpful to me in my life. I've seen the pain of a particular thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I've looked at with that is if you take the old cartoon musket, it has the barrel end that kind of sticks out, and that can be bent to be an ear horn or the old fashioned hearing aid, which is my ENT world, always looking at those kind of things. But how is that even a tool that we can now use actually, instead of as a musket to fire and shoot and hurt, something to actually hear each other and to hear and understand?
Yeah. So instead of I'm going to dig my heels into how my current worldview is and fight violently if necessary to defend it, it's maybe we could hear each other a bit.
100%.
Yeah.
So those are the pieces, because, and on all sides of that, I know there's people that go adamantly defensive one side or the other. And really, truly, if we can all just listen to each other a little bit, acknowledge that there is pain, acknowledge there is hurting, there's a better way that is better than either side's harsh view.
Yeah. And if people really believe in continual learning, right, eternal progression, then
Yep.
isn't there always a better way available? Isn't there?
Always.
And
There's
so
always.
if we get to a point where we're so closed and holding on so tightly, are we really honoring that value of eternal progression and learning? Are we? No, right?
We're not.
Yeah.
So
Thanks so much for sharing. I love having
yeah,
you
man.
on here, Bryan, and inspiring to see Bryan, who's willing to make some decisions to get some support and make his life more what he wanted to, which is,
Yeah.
I think, just way more available and possible and even easier than a lot of people might think it is. So thanks for illustrating that with your example and for sharing. It's awesome to have you on here, man. Lots of love to you.
You too, buddy.
Okay, thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks.
We will see you next time.
Thank you.